It's Ireland versus England. Will Ireland get revenge for last year's game when England were the only team to beat them across the previous two Six Nations tournaments? Hello, amateurs. Welcome back to our Six Nations series. And I've got another amazing guest with me today. It's my former Isha Rugby skipper, Mr. David Slemen. Slem, how are you?
Good, mate. How are you?
Very, very well. Now, people listening, you might have identified an English accent there, but Slem actually played for Connacht as well. So he's got some real experience of the Irish game. Just give us a quick rundown of your time over in Ireland, Slem.
Oh, it's brilliant. I loved it. So went to Galway, played there for 3 seasons. And I think you grow up in the English system and I played for Oral and for Harlequins, and you think maybe this is just being young, but you think you know exactly how everything's done. And you go to Ireland and it's a bit different. And, they play different sports. Like nobody's even heard of Gaelic football or hurling in England. And it's like the setup's just a little bit different and actually arguably much better suited for the professional system now, having 4 teams. And so there's competition for places, but you have less, the whole thing about strength and depth is actually not true because you only choose from 4, so you can be a bit more concentrated. But no, absolutely loved it. It's a fantastic city, and we were competitive in a great. I played in the Celtic League back then, so you get to play against all the big internationals, and the Heineken Cup, as it was called then, the European competitions were still probably prioritised a little bit more than the league. So we get to play against all the best players when they were like 80%. So they would you'd still get to win occasionally. But no, it's a brilliant experience, and very glad to have spent time over there.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, but
it is interesting thinking about it now of being over there, being English, when this game was on, and English people really don't understand the depth of feeling to how much they want to beat England. In fact, a lot of English people don't understand how many of the countries want to beat England so much. There's this joke that the only game that matters is the one against England. It's obviously not quite true, but for fans, and maybe for players, maybe less so now in professionalism, that's the game that matters. And when you're over there, luckily there was 2 other English guys, so I wasn't there on my own, but it was different, and it was great fun. But there was some real bite to it, and there's some real meaning. I know there's a lot of history there, which goes into it. And maybe it sounds like it's not quite it's maybe diluted a little bit, but it was amazing to see the the passion and that's what makes the Six Nations, I guess. But England and Ireland in particular, there's something to it.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. It's always a very, very competitive fixture, no matter which team, how either team are doing. Okay, yeah. But before we jump into the selections and look into this specific game, what are your feelings around England as a whole, Slem? How do you think they're going to be coming into this tournament?
It's so different. I mean, that's the beauty of the international sport in general, but rugby in particular. You haven't played together for, so you don't get that cadence of weekly competition and getting used to partnerships and the things that nobody would notice from watching. It's just the little timings that get it right, the body language, all those things. So I guess that's sitting on the fence saying, who knows, right? But you go to you go to the autumn internationals where, the fact is they lost 3 games in a row, and okay, they beat Japan, but you similar to the Six Nations, you've got to start well and you've got to win. I think what's really nice is hearing Mario Itoje talk. I think his couple of speeches and a couple of things he said has been spot on in terms of we're here to win. Success is winning. And of course you can talk about development, you can talk about performance, but in the Six Nations you want to win, right? And I don't think they were that far off in attack in the Six Nations. And actually, there's been a lot of talk about New Zealand, about the substitutions that were made. And, I hope they don't do that again, in the sense of, listen, post-rationalising what happened afterwards is great. But, if you're in the lead, don't take that for advantage. Stick with what's working. And but I think they've got a really good chance. You just don't quite know. I think they haven't quite got a settled side. Their defence hasn't worked brilliantly. So if they can get their D up to where some of their attack was, they've got a chance, right? And actually, if you look at the back row they've picked for this game, they're going to go for turnovers by the looks of it. So if they can compete on the ground and slow the ball down, then defending, as you know, is much easier. So I wonder if that's maybe the reason why they've picked the Curry Twins, which is awesome to see, right? Brothers playing in the same team. But so yeah, I don't know. They've definitely got a chance. They've definitely got a chance. They beat them last year, but historically, the Aviva's been unbelievably successful for Ireland, and they've won the 4 games previous to that, and they don't lose there. They don't. They haven't recently. So, but I guess if you're English, that's all the reasons why you've got a chance. If you're the England team, that's how you position it. You flip it on your head and you say we've got a chance because they're so successful here. They could get complacent, and they weren't great in the autumn either. They were they stuttered a little bit. So, they've got a chance.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's dig into these selections because it was announced earlier today, starting with Ireland and the forwards. The big news here is Big Joe McCarthy is not playing. He's out injured, and essentially coming in by Byrne going into the second row with Ryan Baird coming in at 6. That's an interesting choice for me because I guess it would have been Ryan Baird or Jack Conan, and they've gone with Baird, who's, I guess, to me, he's more of a luxury player. I think Conan's more of a hard worker, sort of a bit of a baller in there. So that's an interesting choice.
It is an interesting choice, but I guess it's not a... So how would you describe him?
Luxury player. Like, he's got real golden moments. Like, he makes incredible breaks and offloads and stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay, no, I like that. And I think, but maybe with Byrne in the second row, you can maybe... afford that. And actually, just thinking of the makeup of the back row, the other two are, I think if you put Conan in there, it's a bit similar. And actually, you probably want that breadth. I don't know line-out options as well and looking at that, but it's strong, isn't it? Like, you look at that pack, they've played a lot of games. I think they average over, in the whole squad, they average over 40 caps a player, which is what you need. It's what successful teams have, is that consistency. And predominantly Leinster too. Obviously, you've got a Connacht prop and you've got a second row for Munster, but they play there together. And they're probably, you're pretty comfortable if you're Ireland looking at that pack, if you're in that pack, looking around at the team. If you're Prendergast at 10, who's not played that much, who's young, you're pretty comfortable looking one way to your 9 and Bundyaki at 12. You're pretty happy there. So now it's pretty strong. I think, is there a weakness there? It's pretty strong, isn't it? But the turnover, I would suggest, is where they might have a go. Just even a drop of complacency in any area and you've got a chance, but it's pretty strong.
Yeah, they're strong across the board, strong carrying, strong tackling, handling skills as well, set piece. It's a really strong looking pack. There was some...
is exciting. Like, he was arguably the best hooker in the world. Keller's brilliant too, but just seeing... you want to see England, clearly biased, you want to see England attack them, right? And if they're going to win, they have to compete up front. And I think they can. But it's a pretty strong pack.
Yeah, it is. Okay, let's look on the backs. And it's pretty strong here as well. Let's be honest. Okay, but the big thing though, the big selection is Prendergast ahead of Crowley. What were your thoughts on that, Slem? Would that have been your pick as well?
I don't know. Maybe I kind of. Crowley did so well. He played the whole of the Six Nations last year. Played every game, and you don't. I mean, it's great to have that competition. And whilst they've all said that it's not because he plays at Leinster, so there's nothing wrong with it if it is that, because they've got seems harsh on Crawley, but he's got that cadence and rhythm of playing with those players. And he's just one of those players that looks like he's got all the time in the world. He's a great player to watch. And I think he seems unflappable. He just gets on with it. So if he got injured in the first minute and Crawley came on, you're fine too, because they're two great players. So, but I probably would have gone with him just because he looks like he makes it look easy.
And what about the centres as well? Because Henshaw's been playing fantastic rugby, but they've gone with the two that I think have been the favourites for a few years now, Wenfit, Aki and Ringrose. Yeah,
I mean, what a substitute to have, or what a decision to make. And if you go on those three, Ringrose to me is just a fantastic player to watch. He's 30. He's been around a while. And so that's what I would have picked. But again, you've got 8 or 9, 10 backs that should all be thinking they might be able to start right. So having Henshaw to come on, who is brilliant in contact, never loses the ball, is so solid. But that to me is a fantastic back line. And Keenan at fullback is just a joy to watch, isn't he? So it's pretty good back line.
Yeah. Okay. And onto the bench, and pretty much I think as expected here. Really, there was some talk that maybe some Irish supporters were thinking Dan Sheehan might actually start, but first international back after that big injury, I'm not surprised to see him on the bench, and he's going to bring some dynamism when he enters the fray, which I'm sure he will. Another interesting one is Henderson, so experience over Izuchukwu, who's been playing fantastically well for Ulster as well. But they've gone with experience for sure.
and they've tended to, right? You look at that, and that kind of works at international rugby. So should they have maybe brought somebody new in, as you say? Maybe, but that is the experience of that. I mean, Healy's got so many caps, but he's going to kind of dwarf it. But they've all, like Murray at night, like if the game's tight and you need somebody to change it, which it absolutely could be, there's a very different feel to the two packs the two substitute benches, because England is younger and dynamic, whereas this is absolutely proven to do a job and different things, so they come on, if they're in the lead, they can kind of just carry it on. They can kind of it's adaptable, isn't it? So it's like, it's been there and done it before. Like, they know how to win international rugby matches.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's look at England, and we'll go back to the start. There we go. The forwards first. The front five, I think, is pretty much what almost everybody would have picked. No surprise there. But in the back row, as you mentioned earlier, the 3-7s, which England have done before. But I think not in a game like this against a pack as big and gnarly as Ireland. So, I guess you kind of went into it before, really targeting the breakdown and therefore helping the defence on a wider scale. That's what England hope to do. But what negative side might it have for England?
It's super exciting to see what will happen. I mean, I guess it takes a line-out option off at the back. So I don't know how they'd mitigate that. But I mean, geez, Steve Borthwick is the archetypal expert line-out man. So I would imagine, do you give them the front and put them into the middle, and getting technical here, but just put the second rows middle and back and let them have the front? Maybe you do that. And but I don't know, that could be the weakness, and every plan's got one. So I can't wait to see what it's like around the field, because Ireland wants to get into that rhythm. Their phase play is so good, and they can get on momentum. It's hard to stop. But this, if you can get in there and disrupt them, and they did do that a little bit last year, actually. Obviously, they won with right at the end, kind of last minute, but they did stop Ireland playing a little bit. And if England can do that, it's the first game of the Six Nations, all about winning. So if you can in some way disrupt people, build some pressure, get some penalties against them, you've got a real chance. So, and also, most importantly, I wonder why this is maybe one of the big reasons for doing it, is that defensively, our systems haven't quite worked yet. And the blitz at all costs all the time, and I'm sure they don't talk about it like that, but they're going hard and they're being brave. But the timing's just been slightly off. And we've conceded a lot of points. And we've also been quite easy to break down. And so maybe this is like, we've just got to slow the ball down. And if you do that, then you're giving the backs, the rest of the team, the chance to kind of set up properly.
Yeah, and it must be said that Ireland were very far from being fluid in the autumn as well. And Leinster, who obviously make up the majority of this team, haven't been all that fluid in attack either this year. So if England can get in there and not allow them to get started, which I guess this selection is designed to do, then this could be a good route to victory for them.
And I guess what's interesting is Willis there's a lot of talk about him starting at 8, and he hasn't. They've stayed with Earl. So I wonder, maybe there's always a thing where, like, people who've coming in, there's a decision about who's settled, who's played here a lot, and maybe they've got a decision about, we only want to start one new person in the back row, because to put 2, and Tom, Corey, and Ben have been in there for a while, they're really experienced now. So to put Ben in and Ben Curry, and then do you put Willis? Maybe that's just too much, but he's going to come on and have an impact. He's been awesome this year. So no, it's exciting, and I guess the key is just who performs, and this is a pretty strong pack with a lot of experience, and I think they're not far off from having some consistency, some results, but I'll be fascinated to watch.
Yeah, it really will. Okay, into the backs, and again, big talking point for England, as well as it has been for a few teams, was the 10 debate. And again, Slem, as a former fly half yourself, which one would you have picked?
Going back a step, I'm staggered the criticism Marcus Smith got in the autumn. I thought he was comfortably England's best player, almost for the whole autumn. Like, the courage he had, the way he played. There is some criticism with, he doesn't get his backs going, which I think is harsh. I think there's one bit of play where Finn Smith came on and they did a good move. Think, look, he can. And so I don't necessarily agree with that narrative at all. So I would have definitely started with Marcus Smith. Not to say that there aren't things he could do better. I think Mitchell coming in at 9 is a real. He seems to get the momentum going. He seems to really help the flow. But I think Ben Spencer's really hard done by. I don't quite see what he's done wrong, because I thought he was doing pretty well. But I'm not a 9. Maybe I'm wrong. And so I think I would have stuck with him, definitely. The centre thing's fascinating because they've swapped around. Now, whether they actually have, they've got different numbers on the back, but whether they actually do that, they're obviously, I saw them compared to like Lampard and Gerrard. And I read an article about like, how do you get them in the same team sort of thing? And it hasn't quite worked. If it does, you're flying, aren't you? Because they're two brilliant players, and Lawrence has been awesome for Bath this year. Murley's the surprise. I mean, I don't think anybody really saw that coming, really. But he is super fast. He scored loads of tries, and that's exciting, and that's great. Well done him. It's brilliant to see him in the team. And yeah, if this backline sparks, then they've got, they can really go. And Stewart's the way the ball's going to go in the air, the way the rules have changed. Suddenly he should be in the team, although kind of Fairbank was brilliant too, not that he's available. But yeah, it's exciting. I'm obviously a blind optimist and think that everybody can do brilliantly, but I think it's got a nice blend to it.
Yeah, me too. And I think Murley's benefited maybe because Slighton was carrying a bit of an injury recently. That being said, Murley has been on outstanding form. Like, he is lightning quick, and he's been, I think, playing the best rugby of his career very recently. So absolutely fully deserved. And again, you mentioned there the aerial battle as well. And I'm just such a big fan of Freeman in the air. He wins back box kicks so often that I think that could be a real key for England. Onto the bench. And you mentioned this earlier, and I completely agree. It's something that I noticed as well. This is a really dynamic, powerful, fast-looking bench that England have got. And if they need to do more in the end of the game, if they need to raise the pace, they've got the people here to do it.
Up front they do. There's no backs, obviously. They've only got two. But I think you can see where they could actually play a different sort of game with some of those forwards. I mean, Cunningham, South and Willis clearly have got huge dynamism. But there's people there to do a job up front. So I'm sure it's like front row, second row, absolutely empty the tank, give everything you can for the first half and see where you are and in the game. And then, yeah, it's really interesting. Like I say, Ben Spencer seems slightly hard done by to me, but Randall's got outrageous pace. And Finn Smith's been, I guess you could put Mock Smith to fullback, you could change things around. So that's actually somebody who plays two positions. So, yeah, I think what you can see is there's a strategy here of we're going to go with something. We're not going to sit on the fence. We're going to actually have a real decision to make. And so splitting it 6-2, that's what South Africa do. In fact, they did 8-4s once. So, now I like it.
Yeah, me too. Okay, let's look at the game as a whole. It's looking like it might be a bit rainy, might be a bit windy as well in Dublin on Saturday. So the aerial tactics that we just mentioned, alongside the changing of the laws, the outlawing of the shepherding for people chasing kicks, I think the aerial battle will be huge, especially early doors, and it always typically is in these games.
Yeah, totally. And I think that's why England have got a real chance. If it is a bit scrappy, they've got some good kickers. They've got arguably the best person in the world under high ball. And scrum should be pretty solid. I can't see there being too much difference there. Line out will be interesting if they don't have somebody off the back. But England just want to get in there and compete and scrap around. It's nice for them to be an underdog, I think, a little bit, is that they might be talking down. The expectation might be lower, but they're going there expecting to win. They beat them last time. And it is still number 2 against number 7 in the world, though. So Ireland are massive favourites. But if you're going to play Ireland or a team that good in the Six Nations and you have to play them away, first up probably isn't a bad shout, because the advantage being that it's 75% Leinster. So they have kind of played together. But it's different. It's a different environment. It's a different team. So if you're English, especially up front, you probably can't wait to get started. But that's what makes it so exciting, isn't it? Ireland are still favourites, I think, undoubtedly, because I haven't looked at the bookies, actually, but I'm assuming that they are. But 2 against 7, hardly lost there in the last 5 years. Won before the last point loss last season. They would 4 before it. So Ireland are big favourites. But I just feel that England could have a chance here.
Yeah, and you mentioned him earlier, Maritoji, and the new captaincy. Yeah, it's much the same squad, and it's always a different challenge. But I wonder if just having a new captain and a new voice and a new leader, and this is nothing against Jamie George whatsoever, but sometimes that can really invigorate a team as well.
Yeah, and I really like him as a captain. It's like similar to the Martin Johnson when he got picked for the Lions back in '97 of like, we want somebody big, intimidating to be there at the front. Well, he's going to put his body on the line. You know what you're going to get from him. And then everyone else can follow. And, as I said, I thought a couple of things I heard him say this week, I've been super impressed by, because it's like really articulate and really clear. We're here to win. Like, that's what success is. So he's not mincing his words, and he's expecting them to kind of go out and produce results. So yeah, no, I think it's exciting. I mean, he's so experienced. He's been there and done it. He's got the respect of everyone, no doubt. Surprised he didn't get it earlier, if I'm honest. But yeah, that's great.
Yeah, and there's another factor as well, which a couple of, I guess, retired players now, people like Anthony Watson, have been talking about this week, and that's the Lions factor. Because you know that these games, they're almost selection shootouts. You know, if you perform well in this game against somebody that you're potentially fighting for a Lions shirt or a tour place down the road, it can be a massive factor when it comes to Lions selection. So it was good to hear Anthony Watson sort of go, yeah, of course, I've never have said it at the time, but of course it's on your mind.
Yeah.
It's on everybody.
It is that element. And actually, if you look at some of the matchups and you look at some of the people who've not been on Lions tours or not kind of got tested, like Van der Fleer's not been, he's World Player that he has been World Player of the Year, and he's 30, I think. Maybe he's like, oh, maybe he's quite that old, but he's in his late 20s, early 30s. So he's like, for him, I would imagine that this is totally, it's about the Lions. And so, and the ring rows are similar. You know, there's people who maybe haven't quite, and listen, you don't play, do you, very often, for obviously once every 4 years. So if you get an injury, you're not quite there, you're going to miss out. And actually 10's a really interesting one as well, because you've got Finn Russell as maybe the one who's like playing consistently and he's there. So who else is going to come forward? Like Marcus Smith, you would think, he went on the last tour, he can play two positions, so you think he'd be a good tourist. But there's so much going on there. It's really exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's get down to it. Predictions. Oh, actually, before we do predictions, I do want to talk about the line out a little bit more as well, because I think that's something England have struggled with over the last couple of years. There was a time in games where they were desperate to get like middle or back line out ball, which obviously, you know, as a fly half is desirable. It's much easier to get over the game line from that possession. And then they gave up on that last year and just won the ball at all costs, which was often at the front, and then tried to create some quick ball from there. So with their one short line-out jumper option as well, I'm really intrigued to see how England's line-out goes, because I think quality of possession, primary possession like that, has been a factor in them not really achieving as much as they might have. Yeah,
and you're totally right. And I guess where you win that ball is so important to how you start your attack. And if you win it at the front, you're not really going to get too far over the game line. So maybe you're driving it a bit more, but they'll have a plan and a strategy. So we'll be fascinated to see what they decide to do, because that is a short back row. Like there's, you know, they're not tiny, but they're not 6'7". So it'll be interesting to see what they do.
Okay, now it's prediction time, Slem. Who are you going for? By how much? How's it going to pan out?
So I think, I'd love England to win, but I think Ireland will win, but I think it'll be relatively close. So I think my score is 28-25 to Ireland.
Oh, fairly high scoring if the weather is going to be a little bit dodgy.
So I think there will still be some scores. So I just think people will still try and play rugby. I don't think it's going to be that bad, so I might be reining that in, but I'll still go with a 3-point game.
Okay. I think England have definitely got a chance. And if I think England have definitely got a chance, then I have to back them. So I am going to go. I think it's going to be a bit lower scoring, though. I'm going to go something like 23-21 to England. And they'll cause Ireland some problems, disrupt them a lot, and then get a couple of tries off turnovers.
Nice. Well, I hope you're right.
Me too. But what about you people at home? What do you think? Any key factors that we've missed that you think might play a major role in this game on Saturday? Any players that you think might really sort of turn the tides for their team? And do you think Ireland are going to win or England are going to win? Let us know in the comments down below, and we'll join you there for a friendly conversation. Give this video a thumbs up while you're down there if you don't mind. It helps lots of other great rugby fans like you find it. So just leaves me to say, Slem, thanks so much for your time today. That was amazing.
Cheers. Thank you. Enjoy.
And those at home, you can subscribe there and you can watch that one next. And don't forget to get out and play.